All right, and I'm going to go ahead and invite us to, let's see here. Shanti, let's go ahead and actually, as people come in to speak, let's have you pin people just for the recording's sake. Can you be our person for that tonight?
I can, yeah.
Perfect. And will you start with me?
Sorry, 1 second. Is pinning different than spotlighting?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. There we go.
Perfect. Thank you. So welcome everyone. Tonight we're all together to have a conversation about what education can and does and will look like, and look at opportunities and expressions of how education is changing and evolving. All of the speakers tonight on our panel are in some way connected with what's called the Education for Life approach to learning, or are a part of a Living Wisdom school. But we're also exploring all of the manifestations of what change in education looks like. What are some of the new methods and needs of the time that we're in? And so in a larger sense, we're exploring this wave that's coming through that we see coming up in so many different educational settings here in Silicon Valley, and in many parts of the West Coast of the US and in Europe and India primarily. There are Living Wisdom schools which are dedicated to supporting the development of young people from their earliest ages all the way through high school and college to becoming a balanced, whole, complete version of themselves. And so that you know, Living Wisdom School here in the Bay Area has been here for about 30 years. And 4 years ago, we opened a high school. And so the focus tonight is really on supporting the teenage years, especially, but we will also expand it to looking at what is needed across the range. And we have speakers, Helen Purcell and Gary McSweeney, who our director and middle school teacher for Living Wisdom School here in the Bay Area. Aryavan is hailing, he's here in the Bay Area right now, but he's doing work in education in and around New Delhi in India. We have Lakshmi Lapine, who is a public school teacher and also part of our curriculum development team here at Living Wisdom High School. Mandana and Shanti and Hazimak are all teachers at the high school in the Bay Area. And then we have Emma and Audie, who are current students, and Iris and Diego, who are alumni. So everyone here brings a different perspective, and I look forward to expanding and welcoming the conversation out from there. To give a tiny bit more context, one of the things that's been on people's minds throughout the last year and a half is how does education need to change? And I think the pandemic has exemplified or amplified the need for immediate transformation. And so I'm going to open it up right now to Helen and then Lakshmi and Aryavan to share a little bit about our perspective on what is the future of education and how is that manifesting within our Living Wisdom School network.
Well, I guess I'm up. So when I first saw the topic today, I went back in time, really, about 10 years ago, maybe it was a little longer, to Palo Alto, and there was a spate of high school suicides. And it was traumatizing for all of the educators at the time. These were kids who were high performing, many of them, and they were just at the end of their rope. And they made a dramatic decision, a very destructive, self-destructive decision. The whole community came together. And I remember this one meeting in which they had psychologists on the stage. and then all of the administrators and teachers and parents and everybody, all with the goodwill of wanting to help. It was really interesting when they laid down the ground rules for the discussion. And the first thing that they said was, this is not the time or the place to be talking about religion or spirituality. And we thought to ourselves, oh dear, because if you look at what was driving these children, it was that sense of deep inner unhappiness that probably they couldn't even articulate for themselves as to the reason. It was truly tragic in many ways, but the key words of the evening were pressure, competition, stress, all those things that might drive somebody to be self-destructive. And what we offer in response to that is joy. And if there isn't any joy in the learning process when children are growing up, then I think there's been a huge major mistake philosophically and practically in what's being delivered. So it's not a question of, I think the emphasis has to change from grade point averages, from awards that students have, from projects that they do, to something that is deeper. And that other can be an expression of it, but it's not the goal. And how do we get there? Well, we develop a culture where learning and joy come together. And how do you do that? And that's what a Living Wisdom School is all about. It's about cultivating friendship, partnerships, camaraderie on this journey to knowledge and mastery of whatever it happens to be. And the knowledge is not hoarded. It's not, oh, here's my grade point and this is the college I'm going to, but rather it's a knowledge for the sake of knowledge, for understanding, for enriching lives, our own and those of others. It's knowledge that is to be celebrated in community. And failure in this context is accepted as a stepping stone to success. It's not the end of the road. It's not formalized. In the lower school, we don't give grades, and that is so freeing, because what it does is it allows the journey from one point of knowledge to another to take precedence. So Swami Kriyananda, who founded the first Living Wisdom School and who wrote the book on Education for Life, which is the name of our philosophy, talked about a concept called directional relativity. And that is a touchstone for me over all these many years, 40 plus, of teaching. So directional relativity is about the trajectory of learning. It's not about grades. It's not about awards. It's about everything other than that. And it changes the whole learning environment. It makes it very individual, very personal, but also something to be shared and something that includes community. So rather than go on and on, I'll just say this. Those suicides way back when were a primal cry for a more transformative learning model, or you could say for a model that would lead one to know how to live truly. So I'm open to other comments and remarks.
Thank you, Helen. Lakshmi, will you join us?
Yeah, I would love to add to that. My perspective is from the public perspective of being a public high school teacher. I've taught in the public high school system for the past decade. And so much of what Helen was just sharing about the foundation of the philosophy of education for life And here we are talking about what is the future of education and how does Living Wisdom School fit into that. Living Wisdom School is grounded in the principles that are just now on the cutting edge of what we're beginning to see education moving toward. We're asking the question in education, how do we help foster student success? And for so long, that success has been measured in quantitative ways, grade point averages, what college are you going to, different things like that, all of what Helen was expressing. And in the last decade, there's been all of this conversation around what it means to foster happiness and wellness, and to look at a student's well-being as moving beyond just the academics, that academics actually aren't the key foundation to helping foster student success, that mind and body wellness, mindfulness, has become a huge process in the education system. There are many schools now that are grounded in mindfulness, as is Living Wisdom High School. Small learning communities, or what we call schools within a schools, have become very popular in the education system. And what's the purpose of that? To foster connection, community, to help create relationships, not only between students and peers, but between teachers and peers. All of this is what Helen was just sharing. Student-driven learning, service learning, social justice, all of these are, as I said, these are the jargon that are on the cutting edge of, oh, we're just beginning to see in the public school system. This is what we need to do to help students to succeed. Let's talk about growth mindset. So it's not just a one and done. It's let's look at how we can help foster a student to take a test 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, so that we can help them to feel confident in themselves, to grow and evolve with the content that they're learning. So we're really beginning to see a shift to looking at holistic education, and the philosophies of education for life have been grounded in this from the beginning. So what we are just beginning to see and what we're just beginning to explore in public education is what's the very foundation, and it's rooted in all of what education for life is. And so as that continues to grow and evolve, we'll just see Living Wisdom School and education for life always being on the cutting edge of what comes next.
Thank you, Lakshmi. Aryavan.
Thank you. So when I think about education for life and our approach to education, I think about what would we do? I see a lot of companies, especially in Silicon Valley, the big disruptor companies, the ones that are able to really make an impact and the way we relate to technology, usually come from, there's an existing world. How can we completely revolutionize our approach, our way of being in that world? And so what if we did the same with education? What if we just looked at it completely from scratch? Education is designed, its intention is to help children become prosperous, successful, happy adults. Now, the system we've inherited in a lot of ways worked at the time it was invented, but we're coming into an age where things are changing so rapidly that to prepare in the way that we have prepared is to not prepare. And so if we look at the actual practical needs of children going into the world at this time, we have to think about, let's say, some of the most successful companies in the world. Let's say Google. What they look for now in an employee is different than it was for companies even a decade ago. They're not only looking for academic success, and in fact, many cases, they're not even looking for academic success. They're looking for, are you a good teammate? Are you able to work with groups? Are you a good leader? Are you able to follow directions in a way that is cooperative, not mindless? They're looking for people who bring dynamic energy into their jobs and into their lives. And then expanding beyond that, let's look at the pie chart of our day, of our week, our year. What percentage are we spending of that doing, only math, only science, only writing different things? Okay, now what percentage of that is interpersonal relationships? How much are we having to lead people, to inspire people, to make social change, to really make a mark on the world, to leave it better than we found it? And so all of these things come together into this whole where when you give, what Helen was saying, offer that culture of an environment that supports you to learn, but to learn in every sense of the word, not just learning about these sort of abstract subjects, but how do they all connect together? How do they relate to each other? And how can you use that knowledge to better understand yourself, to better understand the world around you, and to become a happier, more whole person? So the great irony is, even as in EFL schools, it might be said we don't always put an emphasis only on academics. We emphasize also personal development and inner growth. But in doing that, we yield very successful, bright children who are very successful academically as well. Because in the relaxation of that anxiety and stress that comes from only achieving this grade in this way right now, when we push that away, it allows us to become actually free, to become who we are meant to become. And when a student, when anybody, when an adult feels that freedom, we become sponges. We absorb everything around us. And learning doesn't become then a chore. It becomes something we look forward to. It becomes a part of who we are as people.
Aryavan, thank you. Helen and Lakshmi also. As we go forward and start to dive into, what is it, maybe in other tangible ways about what is happening within a Living Wisdom school setting or an education for life approach to learning, really that the twofold parts that you're describing, all of you in some way brought it out. There's the inner sense of well-being and connection and being cared for and being connected with self. And then there's the expression out into the world. And how do we bring both of those into balance and into an expression that is rooted in a healthful, happy, contented, meaningful place. So I'd like to invite Gary and then Shanti to share a little bit about what are some of the practices or ways in which Living Wisdom helps students to prepare for a future that is holistically successful and brings more enduring happiness.
Can you mute yourself?
Mhm.
Very inspired by what people have been saying. I'm a little bit caught up in it. How do we prepare to? Well, here's what I would say. I've been a parent of a student who went to Living Wisdom School, and then I've been involved for 20 years. And then over my time, I've met the kids from the other Living Wisdom schools. I would say the hallmark is energy and awareness. And what I told my students this week was the way I assess students, in a sense, is I ask myself, who would I hire? At the end of it, rather than who got the best grade, who had the highest score, like which one of these people would be the type of person I would want to put in charge of a project or to give a job to. And at Living Wisdom schools, I see kids, whatever their natural gifts are, and we do a very good job, I think, of recognizing all the different areas of gifts: music, drama, people that can make friends, qualities of compassion, and all these kind of so-called soft skills. But Aryavan touched on it. If you look at the Google hiring, the top 8 things are what EFL would value: cooperation, kindness, leadership, ability to listen. These are all so-called soft skills. But if Google, after all this time and money, realizes that that's what's really important in life, that might be the shift that we're looking for in education. I don't know how they will ever measure that. But in our schools, we have children that are aware of others, are aware of their own energy. And this serves them really well in whatever field, whatever school, whatever endeavor they get into. I think that's something I've seen over the years, and I think it's really, now how do you measure that? I don't know. But as a parent, I always thought it was the single best thing I ever did for my son, is to send him to this type of environment. And they learn something about themselves. And then I think they're empowered to go out. And I think it's what a parent would be looking for. The very first line in Education for Life is, what do parents want from education? Well, it's success. But then you have to ask, what is success? And the world is changing. So the success of the old model doesn't seem to work very well. And I think the kids have seen through it pretty quickly. And now I think the parents are also, many of them are also seeing it.
Thank you, Gary.
So I would definitely echo so much of what's been said. You know, it's all related, all of these questions. But I come to this topic from experiences as a student in high school and also as a teacher now. And so speaking a little more directly to the program and the different elements of it that lead to success, that lead to happiness, really in this holistic, well-rounded way. As Aryavan mentioned, personal development is a huge part of the program, that element of inner growth. And this comes in multiple ways, life skills that apply more outwardly, and then also inner life skills. You know, outwardly would be communication, interpersonal skills, leadership, finances, basic things like cleaning, cooking, health, writing resumes, applying for jobs, things like that. But then also the inner tools like centering tools. We do a lot of meditation, mindfulness, yoga, tai chi, martial arts, time in nature, and then determination, concentration, empathy, relating to other people, emotional intelligence, honesty. So just all these values that can really just create a foundation for someone so that whatever life brings, you know, life has a lot of unknowns and uncertainties and challenges that come, and we have to be able to think on our feet and deal with them. And so having these tools, both the ones that are outward and inward, they allow us to really respond to each moment. So then it doesn't matter as much what happens, or it doesn't matter as much the challenges that come in college or in work or in life. But if those tools are there, then we have a lot more success. And also, you know, these, especially the inner tools, they create this sense of inner happiness where we don't have to look outward from ourselves to achieve that, you know, through money or through fame. But instead there's this inner kind of deeper happiness that comes from that question of wanting to look inside and know, who am I, what makes me happy, what inspires me, and think questions like that. I would also add that you know, people have mentioned that grades are not as central, or that academic success is not the only piece that's focused on at Living Wisdom. But there is really this focus on excellence, but it varies for each person. So one person's excellence might look different to another person. So in that way, it's really about the individual's goals and also where challenges for that person. And this is both for, you know, academically, socially, emotionally. Students every week set goals, personal goals, such as, you know, speaking out more in class, or practicing time management, or practicing courage, or these things that you know, create real challenge in a really positive and meaningful way, without the stress and without the comparison towards each other. So I guess the final thing that I would add around this question is the hands-on experience that is at Living Wisdom, through service projects, through going out into the community, through hands-on projects in classes, and then also traveling. There's been a tradition each year to go on a service adventure trip. And this is a chance for students to earn money, choose where they're going, enter a community, relate to the people there, offer something, go on adventures. And so I think around the topics of success in life and happiness, having that real hands-on experience in life is so valuable. So, you know, I say that also as a student. I went to 4 different places during my time: Hawaii, India, Mexico, and Panama. And all of those experiences, especially the part of fundraising, earning the money, planning the trip, were just so influential in my life. So I'm going to stop there. But if anyone else wants to add, feel free to jump in.
pause for a minute and just see if there is any spontaneous thought or sharing that wants to come in right now. Panelists or attendees. Okay.
Maybe I
Very-
could add one thing.
Yeah,
There's
Hazi, please.
that excellence point, at least from the high school perspective. And really, one thing we haven't mentioned is how EFL it, it evolves depending on the age group you're working with, and so different age groups have different needs also. So when you're working with 6 to 12-year-olds, especially that's where the academic stuff is not as relevant as developing certain emotional skills, for example. Um, in the high school, working with 12 through 18-year-olds, uh, the the development of a kind of dedication to excellence is also a development of willpower, and is in the EFL system is one of the major emphasis. So I just wanted to add in that to what Shanti was saying.
There are some phenomenal questions coming in, both privately and also to the whole group. We're going to jump ahead a little bit. Hopefully we'll get to answer everything or as much as possible. I do want to just speak to where students come from who join our program and where they go afterwards and what some of that journey looks like. So students find Living Wisdom for a whole array of different reasons. Sometimes it's an awareness of just a subtle dissatisfaction with what they've been experiencing in learning. Sometimes there's a friend that they know who has all of a sudden come to life with their learning experience, and friends are drawn into it. Sometimes there are challenges personally that they're facing, and this kind of nurturing, meaningful environment is a place where they can heal and come back into a fullness of expression who they are. There's so many different reasons. Our program in the high school is very personalized. So there was a question about what students learn, and there are certain guidelines that all students learn and study through the high school years. And those are, because we're especially here in California right now, they're closely aligned with the University of California system has a set expectation for students who are wanting to be college ready. And our college ready is not a traditional college ready, but there are certain courses that have to be completed in order to be able to make that kind of a transition. So that is part of our awareness. However, and Shanti may be able to speak to this, and Hazi and Mandana also, about how classes are structured. So we have blended classes where there are students studying in different through different learning tools at different readiness levels, and diving deep into different aspects of the curriculum that they find meaningful. In psychology, for example, a lot of the assignments and projects are very much application based and integration based into the student's life. So it's not just studying theory and covering all of the standard psychology coursework that you would find in a typical high school level or honors level course. It's a lot about how do I take this and make it meaningful and put it into my life. Mandana in her history classes pays very close attention to each student and works with them to draw out their areas of interest, and then helps them create specialized projects where they go deep in a certain area and then they come back out of it as a teacher that then shares with the larger class. So everyone's learning together in that way. Our students are, and I think I have a couple alumni here who will speak to it, very prepared to go out into the world, whether when they leave high school, they're going into a rigorous college experience, whether they're choosing to go into a fine arts development program, a technical school, taking a gap year and really diving deep into finding themselves more strongly before they enter into maybe further higher learning or a career path. And so each pathway and each student is held as a unique individual who isn't being pushed into a mold that they need to conform to, but is really supported to discover who they are and what their expression is, and then rise to the highest that they can within that context. I'm going to go ahead and open it up to Iris and then Diego to share just a little bit about what your experience was with Living Wisdom and how it has translated into college life. Both of these young adults are finishing their first year of university. And please, when you guys come in, share where you are and anything that you feel too about your experience going from high school into college and what that's looked like. We'll start with you, Iris.
Hello, I am Iris, and I'm currently at UCSD. I first joined Living Wisdom in junior year, entering junior year, and so far my experience was pretty nice. I wasn't dissatisfied, like terribly dissatisfied at my old high school, but I felt like I reached a sort of stagnant phase. And so upon looking into more options, Living Wisdom, I stumbled across Living Wisdom, and I decided to come here. And I will say, if I didn't come to Living Wisdom, I don't think I would be as ready for college. I found a very crucial part was the taking initiative, because in the school I was at, or for a lot of my education, I tended to follow what was expected of me, the classes that other people tended to take, or the way you're supposed to write an essay, or the way you're supposed to think. But I found that as I was going, I realized that after college, I won't be able to kind of follow a flow because there wasn't a set flow. And so going into Living Wisdom, there were a lot of chances to sort of start, like the personal passions projects, I was able to take my own initiative in a lot of aspects. And also socially, to make friends, to initiate conversations, because that was a struggle for me before. So there's some very many different aspects. I would say Living Wisdom has prepared me a lot better for college.
Thank you, Iris.
I can echo a lot of what Iris has said. I'm finishing my first year of college. I am a computer science major at Chapman. And I came from a very large high school where I really felt like I was just one of the thousands of kids there. And that was something that I really didn't enjoy about learning. So when I came to Living Wisdom High School, I found it to be a lot easier just to kind of be in a smaller group. And that really helped me learn that there's really no one I should be comparing myself to except myself. I'd say in Living Wisdom, I got to meet a lot of really great people who I've connected really deeply with because of how small the environment was, and the courses I took and the projects I've done were so connected with those people that I really learned a lot from every single one of them. And now that I'm in college, I'm able to kind of like just compare myself with myself instead of everyone else, and that's really helped me focus on what I want to do and how I go forward in life. So it's been a really great time in Living Wisdom, and I feel like I've done great things because of it.
Thank you for sharing with us, Diego. Audie, will you share a little bit just about what it's like for you as a student in a small but tight-knit learning community?
Yes. Well, I personally like it a lot. Like, obviously, some people will prefer bigger schools, and some people will prefer smaller schools. But I think that Living Wisdom does a good job, and I've never seen anyone like not satisfied, who, you know, like, who have been classmates with, or who I've talked to. And um like um about what Shama mentioned, that in Mandana's class, she'll make us a teacher, and that's one of my favorite things. In history class, there's a lot of projects, and she'll say, okay, you guys will split you into groups, or you guys go off, you learn about this topic, or you learn about like this language, or you learn about this event, and you research it and you teach everyone else, and that gives us not only experience in you know, being a student and being good at finding resources, making stuff, but also at um, teaching and learning. Okay, I have to word my information this way to make it interesting, or I have to do this to make it concise, or I have to do this so that people are engaged. Um, and also, one of my favorite things about living wisdom is that not just the high school but also the middle school, um, is that the teachers really care about um, the subjects, and they learn. I mean, they teach because you know they have a desire to, and um, you know every one of the teachers here, like, they put in a lot of work, and they put in a lot of like, you could pretty much talk to any one of them, and you could just have like a discussion about whatever they teach, and um you can really tell that, like, they're here because they want to be, and they're happy to like talk to you, they're happy to teach you, they're happy to answer your questions. And yeah, also, like, the community, um everyone really knows each other, and um like, everyone's very like upfront with each other, and like, everyone's very honest with each other. There's no real there's none of that like dumb drama that like you find at other places. And everyone can just be like genuine with each other, and um that's another thing that I really appreciate, and I feel that that's something that like most people would, if not all people.
Thank you, Adi. Emma, I'm going to invite you to share a little bit about some of the personalized learning experiences, and specifically around passions projects. And there was a question in the chat just around, does the service work that students get to do align with their personal interests or their personal path that they're taking? And you're engaged right now in a process that very much speaks to that. Can you share a little bit about that journey for yourself?
Sure. Hi, I'm Emma. Well, obviously, I'm a sophomore now at Living Wisdom High School. And for me personally, one of my serious interests has always been medicine, neuroscience, and psychology in particular, but mainly medicine. And as a result, I immediately knew the moment I heard Personal Passions Project, just the phrase last year, I knew that I wanted to do something related to it, preferably even specifically related to neuroscience or neuropsychology. And just, it was really cool because through a network, I managed to not only research the topic itself, but even interview a doctor. And at first, I thought, like, whoa, I'm meeting someone, I'm meeting a professor at Stanford who just, I definitely was excited about that. And then it sort of went to the next level in the sense that, although I understand this obviously isn't everyone's cup of tea, um, I got invited to watch a brain cutting, which personally for me, it was.
See if she comes back. A Passions Project is one facet of high school curriculum where students identify an area of interest that they want to pursue and dive deeply into it. It's what we might call a self-directed project, and there's a mentor on their faculty who they work closely with, and then also a professional mentor in the field that they're interested in or in the subject area they want to explore. And so students design what they want to do and then are supported along the way to manifesting that or experiencing it. And through Emma's work last year and the foundation that she laid with the professor she was just referencing, she's now applying to an internship with the VA hospital where she'll be able to serve for a couple of months this summer if she's admitted. So very much as wherever we can find those opportunities where there's the overlap of the person's personal interest and passion and tying that into growth points and service opportunities and adventures and life experience, the more we all can have those experiences through school, the stronger we become and the more meaningful our learning becomes. I would open it up also to any other of our student representatives or alumni, most recent or from past years, who might want to share other experiences related to that.
Emma is back also.
Hey, Emma.
Apologies, there was a Wi-Fi issue. I got it sorted out, so.
Go ahead and continue.
Yeah, I got to learn quite a bit, and then I received a follow-up opportunity recently to actually volunteer at the VA, which was where at the hospital, which was where the interview and the experiential opportunity had gone on. And so I would say that, yeah, there are opportunities to give back to the community and work with the community that align with one's passions. And overall, it was a pretty cool experience. I remember there were a lot of really great stories, even from other people at the time, when they got to connect with other mentors. And there's something really exciting about being able to do what you greatly enjoy and watching other people do what they enjoy and then sharing about it, because there's this just sort of wonder. You get to hear about it all and you get to see it all, and it's a little bit perfect. Well, it is perfect in a sense, in the same way pretty much anything can be perfect. It's inspiring too.
Thank you so much for sharing your experience. I'm going to open this up more broadly, so not calling on anyone in the panel to speak specifically to it, but the question is a broad one in terms of what are the changes that, and we've spoken to some of it already, but we're looking at such an intense epidemic of stress and depression and isolation in teens, and that's been exacerbated over the last year and a half as we've lived through this pandemic. So what are some things that schools, not just a small school that we're talking about here, Living Wisdom, but any school or any educator could start to bring into the classroom to help transform the space from one that is stress-based and maybe creating greater isolation or separation or competition, and moving in the direction of, Helen spoke to this at the very beginning, a place where learning and joy come together. What do we do? How do we start offering those tools to teachers and students to have that transformational experience?
I'd like to at least try to start to answer that and then hear what everyone else has to say. But to me, the word that kept coming up when listening to all of the student experience.
For just a sec, because we're getting really bad feedback.
Oh, but I'm not even in the room with them. I did a good thing.
Might need to put you on a different.
Is that any better?
It is a little better, yes.
A little or a lot? 'Cause
A
that could be
lot,
playing.
yes.
Okay. Let's call it great then. Well, I just wanted to talk briefly on something I noticed about all of the students were talking about something that could be described as empowerment. Something that I notice is that not only in EFL, but in classrooms that work, the teacher empowers the student to learn something themselves. And we heard a little bit about things like initiative or about picking a passion project. But all of these things revolve around this idea that when they leave school, they're going to suddenly find themselves automatically empowered, but they're not, maybe won't have experience in how do I use that in order to actually move towards what I want to achieve, what I want to learn, what I want to become. And so that whole theme, there's so many different ways of doing it, but bringing the student into the process. So it's not just this unidirectional flow of just information from the teacher to the student, from the curriculum to the student, but it becomes something that's dynamic and is alive and is giving students, even from class 9, even from before, an opportunity to be a part of that process. All of a sudden they take ownership of it, and when you have ownership of something, you're much more inclined to give it everything that you have, and then it can actually become a part of you in that way. Whereas if we keep it sort of top down, the trickle down sort of thing, well, they'll get something for sure. It's not that nothing will happen, but they won't have the same relationship with it. It won't become something that's theirs, that they get to say, look at what I learned, look at what I saw, look at what I did, look at these amazing stories I've heard of people who followed their passion and are doing things that they really love. And now I know I can do that too.
Other thoughts, insights?
I had something to share. Yeah, just really appreciate the way you all are holding the culture of learning, and I think yeah, I learned something from everyone who spoke. So thank you all for sharing. But the what I'm really getting is the process that you are also actively engaged in learning. Hasn't stopped for anyone else when they left high school. It's the same exact thing that everybody is in. We're all in this need to cultivate joy, and the joy is the learning, and the learning is the joy. They are completely interrelated, and yeah. How do you just the fact that you guys are holding the culture there, I think is so key. And I think just I think more places that have that value and hold that culture, and inviting more people into it, which I know is part of the purpose of this. So yeah, thank you all. Very, very inspiring and very well spoken, I would say too. Just really, really a lot of great. I'd like this recording. I want to revisit it. So a lot of great inspiration there. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Michael, also for just highlighting that the journey doesn't stop when we leave formal education. It's so much more about how we live and move through the world. Here on our campus, we have 3 faculty members who grew up in either this school or a sister school, and you can feel how people move through the world. There's an intuitive quality to how people approach interpersonal relationships, how we face into challenges, how we seek and experience joy and then choose to share that with the people around us rather than shrinking our joy down into something that we try to hold on to and savor and keep for ourselves. There's a quality to the culture in a school that's rooted in education for life principles, and they're not limited to any one school or system. They're universal principles that can be developed and brought into education across the board and into life.
I think I would add a little something. And what comes to my mind is that those qualities come out of experience. And so in our school, in the lower school, but I also know in the high school, we give the children opportunities through experience to develop certain qualities like perseverance in the face of difficulty. And I know the high school is getting ready to do its Joyathon. And my children who went to the Living Wisdom School up at the Ananda Village, they also had Joyathons in the primary grades where they learned to go way beyond what they thought they could do because they stayed the course. And then, of course, there are the other things that, that's only one example, but another story to share is we teach the children in the lower school how to meditate. And when I say that, I'm not talking about hours of meditation. I'm just talking about incremental. We give them a very non-denominational way of becoming very still and stilling their bodies and then their minds and holding that space for a little time. Even in the kindergarten. And there's this classic story of a little kindergarten boy who was on a plane that was having technical, mechanical difficulties and went through tremendous turbulence, more than what was usual for a long period of time. Everybody was panicked, and his mother turned to him and said, "What do your teachers do to help you stay calm?" And he immediately went into lotus position and meditated for about 5 minutes. And the stewardesses, of course, everything calmed down and they landed at Los Angeles airport. Stewardesses came to her and said, "Where did he learn that?" And she said, "His teachers taught him that. And he'll have that forever." Just as the people who go through the Joyathon are going to learn to face adversity when they're screaming to get off that bike. So, I mean, we do that consciously, intentionally, purposefully.
Absolutely. Thank you, Helen. Hazi and Mandana, I'm going to invite each of you to speak a little bit to this idea of no limits and what that looks like in the classroom and in the work with individual students and just it's almost a mindset for life and for learning. You want to start us off, Hazi?
Yes. So my name is Hazi Mak. Just to introduce myself, I am a teacher at the Living Wisdom High School at Palo Alto. I teach the mathematics, literature, and I also work with PE. I'm also an alumnus of the Palo Alto School before we had a high school. So I only went through up until middle school, and then I left for high school. And so I'll talk a little bit about this concept that Shama described as no limits, and I'll also link it to a previous thing we were discussing, which was the question of how do we reduce stress, and because there's a connection between the two, and I'll focus mainly on math, although it expands outside of math, but I'll focus on math. And one reason I'll focus on math is this is a very notorious subject. Mathematics is a subject which everybody hates, everybody's scared of, everybody has a bad experience of, all kinds of, almost everybody. I come from it from a very different perspective. So I went to the Living Wisdom School growing up, and my mom presented mathematics to me as something fun, which is, who would have thought? And at the Living Wisdom School, where Gary was my teacher, I was given free reign to just learn math. And so by the 5th grade, I had taught myself algebra, for example. Unfortunately, I made the choice to leave Living Wisdom School, and I studied somewhere else for the 6th grade, and I got put into a regular class with other students. And it really knocked me down because I didn't have that space to explore and to discover, and it was not at the right level for me. It was too low in the level, and so I came back to Living Wisdom. By the end of 8th grade, I had taught myself calculus, and then in this space, I was able to do that. And so in 9th grade, I was able to continue on and have a very accelerated math experience. But again, in high school, it was again with everybody else moving only at that pace, only at the pace of the group. And so it really hampered my learning, actually. And so what I just want to talk about is the way that, at least in mathematics, but in a lot of the studies, so a lot of the classes, including in English, there's a bar, and you have to hit this bar. And this bar, for some people, might be too low. And so they are trained to put out 40% of their effort, 50%, 60%. And they're kind of bored. They're not really having a great experience. For other students, this bar is just, they need to put out 100%, 110% of their effort to get there. And it becomes extremely stressful because they're just barely getting there with all of their effort. And it takes all of their effort just to stay up there, and they feel like if they fall off, they're going to fail at life. And that's a very sad thing to believe. And then for other students, the bar is just not reachable, and they accept it and they just give up. They say, I'm never going to be able to do math. End of story. And so this way of learning, nobody's ever at the right point. It's either too easy or it's too advanced, and it creates a lot of stress. So with the mathematics, I try to emphasize a process and a mindset and how we do it, and this process of exploration. Many students have never been asked to do a math problem which they might not be able to solve, which might be impossible to solve, which might just, their experience has been, here's a formula. You do this formula on this kind of problem. Now do it. And then they do it again and again and again, which doesn't teach them how to think. It doesn't develop a lot of their inequalities that are necessary for being successful in life. So we try to shift the emphasis away from that single bar to a process. What is the process of discovery like? What is the process of exploration like? What is the process of learning how to learn looks like, of reading something maybe you don't understand? So one of our students, for example, he was able to, in the public school, the 8th grade, he had finished Algebra 1, and then I gave him the tools to just go off and explore. And I guess that hadn't been done before, and now at the end of 9th grade, he's finished a calculus textbook. So and it's going through his own capacities, and he's able to, and it's joyful, it's fun for him. Other students, numerous students have come into our school, and they have to unlearn some of the tension, anxiety, but they start to think of math as something fun, something exciting, something enjoyable, which is, that's shocking, I think, for most people, the idea that it's even possible that students can think of math that way. And I think that part of it is something which I learned in the Living Wisdom classroom, this kind of, we're calling it no limits, basically just what is your personal exploration of a topic, and we'll give you space to do that personal exploration. And not everybody will be accelerating really fast through the material, but everybody is going according to their own abilities, and they're drawing, and they're experimenting, and they're exploring, and they're trying to grapple with something which, that experience, that process of just trying to grapple something, it energizes the brain, it helps develop the brain. And that unlearning of I don't need to do everything perfectly in order to consider myself as successful. It can be that I make progress, I grow, I'm better than myself a day before, a month before, or something like this. So at least that's how it kind of looks like in the math. And that's a very brief introduction. I want to speak just for 30 seconds on the literature. A very big shift for a lot of the students is they always come in and they're ready to write their essays, and they say, okay, I'm going to find my 3 topics. And I say to them, why 3? Why is it 3? And they don't have a good answer. It's just, well, that's because you're supposed to do it that way. Now, some students, they have more to say. They have more to say than just those 3 paragraphs. They have more to say than just those 3 topics, and they can go beyond that. They can reach out and discover more than just 3 isolated topics, and they can come up with a coherent web of ideas. And some students, it might be difficult to find those 3 topics, and we might need to work towards that in a sense, and really start, rather than here's the bar, I need to get those 3, and you just shove in 3 ideas and you force it into this essay, which is artificial. Why don't I look inside and discover draw out what kind of ideas do I have, and learn to express those ideas, and first discover them, and then let's think about what's the best way to structure them. And so the essay, some students go very far, and they do a lot of outside research, and they develop long lists of ideas, and they go very creatively in their work. So that's just a little brief on how that looks like in literature. I'll pass it to Mandana, or unless Shama wants to say something.
Kazi, thank you. Mandana, if you have any comments also on this, and then we'll start to wrap things up.
Sure. So the idea of no limits, it's also very related to individualized learning. So we do have a structure for each class and curriculum, but for example, in history, when I'm teaching history, I don't only mention what happened in that time period, but I try to bring different perspectives from different people who used to live during that time. For example, okay, World War II happened in this country, but how did it affect to people of this country, not just like the political situation? What happened in this, for example, scientist who was, for example, Einstein was living in that time and he had to move to the US. So I'll bring videos, I'll bring different perspectives, personal stories about that time frame. And also when I said individualized, what I mean is that you try to know your student. So you know your student, you know what their passion is, what they like, and then you bring those more to the class, you share it with them, and then you help them go out and explore, like Hazi was saying. So you will give them the resources. If I have any to, oh, you're interested in that, you can, read this, you can do that, or you can watch this. I'll try to bring a lot to the class, but if we don't have time, I just tell them, this book, this is about this time period, this is amazing, you can go read this. And also, another thing is that we use our students and their talents in the school. So we're not just teachers, but if they have computer science knowledge, if they're they know better than us in technology or something, we use that and we give them the opportunity to help us, for example, secure our Wi-Fi or anything that comes up. So we use these things. And one of the good examples, I think, is the passion project that each student will come up with something that they're interested about. And then Kashama or whoever is working with them, they find the connection for them to go deeper in that and get connected to the people who can help them. So it's kind of like you first know your student and you help them push and they go their way. You help them to start. And also another thing that happens at Living Wisdom High School is that we have different opportunities. For example, we have our newsletter, which and we have a journalism group. So the students get to interview each other or interview other people. They get to report what is happening. They report our news and they write about it. And for example, I want to create a podcast about our school, but I went to our students and asked them, hey, are you guys interested in helping me with that? So some of them are interested and they are like, oh yeah, I want to do that. And I'm like, okay, what do you like to do? So we sit together and we create a script. And then he said, okay, I'm going to go record, bring the audio, and someone else might say, I'm going to edit it. So we basically not only focus on academic, but we see what they're interested about or what projects we are working on and see if they can help us with that if they're interested.
Thank you so much, Mandana, for giving such tangible examples also, and Hazi too, and what it looks like in the classroom. As we have touched on all these different pieces of what education for the future looks like, or what an education for life really is. A few things stood out to me as I was hearing each person talk. We're working to educate, develop, bring into full expression the body, the mind, the will, the intellect, the heart and soul of each person who we have the opportunity to serve. Students are empowered to take control of their learning and their life and dive deeply into areas of interest, and to be supported in areas of struggle, to find meaning in life, to experience community, to be in partnership with teachers and one another, so that we move away from competition and into cooperation. All of these are pieces of a whole. I'd like to thank all of you for your interest and exploration with us tonight into what this can look like. And as we end, I'm going to stay on the call and invite anybody who would like to ask more questions, get more information. And thank you to everybody who's been here speaking tonight. Much appreciation for all of your insights and wisdom and decades of experience. Thank you, college students, for taking time out of your finals week to be with us. Thank you, everyone, for being here tonight, and I wish you a wonderful evening. If you want to know more, or you're ready to take next steps, feel free to just stay on the call and we'll discuss what that looks like. Thank you and good night.
Thank you, Kashama and everyone.
Michael, thank you for being here.
Great to be here. Aloha. Great to see you all.
Aloha. Love to everyone in Hawaii.
I'm glad you're all doing this amazing work in the world. Very heartening. Thank you.
It is a joy. Hi, Vina. Glad you could make it tonight.
Good night, guys. It was beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing. I feel very inspired. Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah.
Susan, you asked, and I think it was you also asked a question just about how we make living wisdom accessible to people of different socioeconomic strata. And we have a policy with the school that tuition assistance is available to anyone who qualifies, and we encourage people to apply for it. Right now, we have about 40% of our student body on some form of tuition assistance, whether it's full ride or partial reduction. And we've been doing some and exploring further ways of directed outreach to less affluent communities, because we're here in the middle of Silicon Valley and there's some pretty dramatic disparities in the local communities. So that's also part of our process right now.
Well, I'm thrilled that this movement has come my way, because as an educator for over 40 years in Montessori, and when I read Kriyananda's book, I said, this is absolutely the next step. And, you know, I retired, but I got caught up with Kansas state education, which is now the framework of Montessori, not because of me, but because of the superintendent. But they've included me in it, and I've been able to observe that. So this movement is now a statewide movement, the first state to actually have these principles that are a part of EFL and Montessori.
Thrilling, actually.
It is. And it's been 5 years in the making, and all the schools are mandatory, you know, to this process by 2023.
Wow. I'll look forward to hearing how that unfolds.
It's amazing to see the farm schools go to all these different places and see them all active, participating, inspired, and it's all with the same framework in the Montessori, in EFL, the movement towards self-realization, who you are, what your gifts are.
Yeah.
This is wonderful. Thank you.
Oh, I'm glad, and I look forward to supporting. You guys are looking at starting an Education for Life school, possibly in Colorado.
Yes, I'm going to start the course with the first part.
If there's anything we can do to help, let us know.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to sign off.
Okay.
Thanks so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Hey, Kishama, it's Dove. Sorry.
Hi, Dove.
Hey.
How are you?
Let's see if we can fire up our.
No, the camera's not.
Oh, our camera's not working. Our camera doesn't work. But at least you can hear me.
Yeah.
I'm here with Lily, and I sent questions, but I think they were quite late. You know, I only sent them like half hour before you guys started. So I can ask here.
Please do.
How long has the high school program been going?
So here in the Bay Area, we're completing our 4th year of operation, and our sister high school, which is in Nevada City, has been in operation since the late 90s. I don't know the exact year that it started, maybe 97 or 98. So we had our first graduating batch of seniors from this location last year.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah.
So have the class sizes been, like, what have the class sizes been like for the last 4 years?
They've been hovering right around where we are now. We've been steadily increasing. We had, I believe, 12 last year. We have a current student body of 15. We're looking at about 20 for the coming year. That's the projection.
So what I'm curious about, I mean, obviously, everything that's been shared, I think, like, is totally in line with what Lily and I envision for our family and for our children, like this level of awareness and presence and mindset that, I think Hazimak mentioned earlier, that this is what a lot of companies are looking for. It's the mindset, right? More than, but the grades do count. I can tell you that. Like, I mean, they do look at credentials and all that, but the mindset, and those are the skill sets that are the hardest to develop. And companies frankly struggle with this right now as they're trying to develop the workforce, because those are the skill sets right now that are really hard to come across. Anyways, the whole reason I'm asking this is, you guys have such a focus on this, but why do you think it is that the draw to the school has been so low? Or are you guys just why aren't we seeing much bigger classes, especially when we have the Apples and the Googles and the Facebooks here, and those are the kind of parents that know exactly the dark side of technology and the dark side, and the benefits of awareness and presence and leadership.
Yeah, it's that is the $1 million question, actually. And I don't know that I have a clear answer for you. There's probably many different angles it can be picked up on, and I would open it to all of us to explore together. Our school, I mean, really, in the 30 years that the elementary and middle school has been here, it's been a small, tight-knit community. In some ways, that is a core value. If we grew too large, too fast, I think we would run the risk of losing some of the quality of the community that's developing here. I think over time, expansion is important, but it is a question. Not a lot of people are aware of us, and what we've seen is, I've been with the school here in the Bay Area for 13 years, and it is almost always word of mouth that brings people into the community. I know that's how you guys found out about Living Wisdom also. I don't have a straightforward answer, though. Yeah, it's a question mark.
Okay, I appreciate it. And I think the other question I had was about the Foothill College relationship. So is it open to anyone in high school who wants to explore another another path of learning, another class to augment what they're doing at Living Wisdom? Or can you tell me more about, like, are materials included in that? Like, is this something that we go off and pay extra? Like,
Good questions. Yeah. So it is available to students. And I would say usually we don't start a student as they come into 9th grade or their very first semester if they're not an upperclassman already. We probably wouldn't say, okay, let's sign you up right away for a college level course, because there's a settling in period, and we want to make sure that not only do they have the intellectual capacity, but also the well-rounded maturity to step into a more adult learning environment. But yes, we've had several freshmen this year who came in and by the second semester had demonstrated a level of maturity and a readiness for the added rigor and the expanded opportunities. And so they've stepped into some college classes their second semester of freshman year. It's on the table for anybody who is interested, and we and family all feel that it would be a meaningful experience. It is included in tuition, and actually high school students who enter into a dual enrollment program like this attend their classes at Foothill for free. And when there are supplies that are needed, usually the school will step in and provide those also if there's a textbook or something like that that's needed. So it's all part of the partnership that we have with Foothill, but also students have taken classes at De Anza College. There are some classes that aren't available at Foothill that students want, and so we have been able to help them enroll there. There's a number of other community colleges locally also that are optional.
well, it's amazing, the
Yeah.
partnership. I'm curious, what were the two courses that your two students took?
So our freshman students took chemistry.
Wow.
Yeah, they dove in, and they actually found, it was interesting, they actually found that there was greater depth and rigor in the first class that they took at Foothill. It was less in depth than what they were receiving from our chemistry teacher here. And then one student chose to go on and take chemistry 1A, which is the general chemistry. And he's very, very satisfied with the rigor and the challenge and the depth of learning in that class. And then we've had other students take graphic design work, psychology classes. They have so many opportunities. It's beautiful. Dance class.
That's fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I look forward to staying in conversation with you.
Yeah, for sure. Are we the last folks
You're
here?
not, no. Min, you're also here with us, or maybe it's Lusong. They may have.
Well, we're gonna part ways, but for the call, but really appreciate everyone's feedback.
Thank you so much.
And the story.
No, thank you. Sorry, I was mute.
Oh, that's
No
okay.
problem.
Yeah, no, this is very informative, very helpful. Thank you so much.
Hazi, last night, my middle son, he's a 12-year-old, and I were watching the commencement speeches, and we watched you, and my son was just sitting on the couch, and he heard your voice. He goes, "Oh, I know who that is," and he ran up to talk, to see you and listen to what you had to say from your graduation speech.
From many years ago?
From many years ago. We were watching them all.
Yeah, very inspiring.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Hey, thank you for putting this together, Kashama, and thanks for everyone's feedback and thoughts. Really appreciate it.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Look forward to talking
Thank
to
you.
Take care.
Bye.
So also, if you guys have ideas about how to help us reach more people, it would
Yes.
Oh, I'm a specialist.
Lily's a specialist.
Wonderful. Lily,
And
let's
am I. But yeah, we'll talk.
Okay.
All right, take care. Bye-bye. Have a good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you so much.
Bye. Thank you.
It's on the recording.